So, I was scrolling through Twitter the other day when I saw that someone had posted an article from Kotaku titled, "Releasing cool new games on the 3DS is such a waste." What? Releasing a game is never a waste, because I'd rather have the game come out and have the chance to play it than have it not come out and never have the ability to play it. This article comes from the news that Atlus is releasing Persona Q2 exclusively for the 3DS. Needless to say that an article with this clickbaity of a title got destroyed in the comments section. Most of the comments had two main points. The Persona Q games can only work on the 3DS because of the two screens, and the 3DS has a larger install base than the Switch. This article gave me the idea to take a closer look at if the 3DS and the Switch can exist together, even when Nintendo has plans to support the 3DS into 2019 and beyond. Let's do this. So I haven't played the first Persona Q game because I haven't played Persona 3 or 4 yet, and I want to know the characters before I start playing it. The main point of the article is saying that Persona Q2 should be released on the Switch, and that it's a complete waste to release the game on the 3DS now. I can understand why people that own a Switch want every new game to come out for the Switch, but it's not a waste of a game if it only comes out for the 3DS. For me though, the last 3DS game I bought and played was Metroid Samus Returns, and even with the new 3DS XL, my hands started cramping after an hour of playtime. I haven't touched any of the 3 3DSs that I own since Metroid came out because I own a Switch. However, that doesn't mean I refuse to play games on my 3DS anymore just because I have a Switch. I plan on picking up Persona Q2 when it releases, since the main cast of Persona 5 are the stars of the game, and I absolutely loved Persona 5 last year. I would love for this game to come to the Switch just like everyone else, but I understand why Atlus chose to keep the series on the 3DS, and that brings me to my first main point. This game can only work effectively on a system with 2 screens. Persona Q is basically a reskin of the Etrian Odyssey games with the Persona charm infused into the game. The Etrian Odyssey games were specifically made for the DS and the 3DS because of the touchscreen, which they used to let the players draw their own dungeon maps on. You have to map out the dungeon that you are in and mark where things like stairs and enemies are so you know where you're going throughout. This really couldn't work on the Switch unless they incorporate a button to switch to your map within the press of a button. Also, Atlus already had all the groundwork laid out from the first game, so they were able to reuse a lot of the parts that they had already created before. It would have cost them significantly more time and money to rebuild everything from the ground up for a Switch release. These games work the best on the 3DS, and the core fans will definitely go out and support the game when it's eventually released. With the Switch being the success that it is, Octopath selling over 1 million units in less than a month, and the Switch breaking the record for most consoles sold in the first year, it's understandable that people want every new game to come to the Switch. But, and this brings me to my second point, does a larger install base for a system mean more sales? I did some research on the games that came to both the 3DS and the Switch so I could get an accurate idea on what system was selling more games. Fire Emblem Warriors came out on the same day for both consoles, and the 3DS has sold 0.14 million copies, while the Switch version has sold 0.46 million copies. The recently released Captain Toad sold only 0.03 million copies on the 3DS, while the Switch sold 0.17 million. Even the flop that was Sushi Striker sold more on the Switch with 10,000 copies on the 3DS and 40,000 copies on Switch. The game that is closest in sales is Super Mario Maker, which has over 3 million copies sold on the 3DS, and on the Switch it has... Oh wait, I forgot. Mario Maker is not on the Switch. Come on, Nintendo. The only game that has sold more on 3DS than Switch is Hyrule Warriors, with 0.49 million on 3DS and 0.31 million on Switch, and that's only because the 3DS version has been out 2 years longer than the Switch version. The fact is that the argument of having a larger install base equals more sales is just completely false. These 4 titles have shown that it's not about the larger install base, but which platform people want to play their games on. This doesn't mean that the 3DS is dead in any way, it's just kind of been pushed to the side. People still use their 3DS for plenty of games that have come out in the Switch's time frame though. Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon have sold over 6 million copies, and that was only released last year. And WarioWare Gold has sold over 70,000 copies in Japan exclusively, and that game's only been out for 3 weeks. Would Persona Q2 or any of the 3DS exclusives that are coming out in the next year sell better if they were on the Switch? Yeah, probably, but that isn't an argument to discredit an entire system that has sold over 70 million units. To put that into perspective, that's about 10 million away from the PlayStation 3 and almost double that of the Xbox One. If you aren't going to buy a game just because it isn't coming out on the newest platform, then whatever. You don't have to write an entire article bashing a system that still has games being released on it. And one last thing, the Switch is not the successor to the 3DS like a lot of people think it is. It's a hybrid console, and about 95% of the time, I have mine docked so I can play it on my big screen TV. I just don't really like it in the small screen and handheld mode, but I play that sometimes, just not all the time. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I have plenty of other videos if you want to check those out, and if you like what you saw here and you want to see more, you can subscribe down below. I also have a Twitter in case you want to follow me on there to hear any more of my opinions. Thanks again, guys, and I'll see you next time.